Good day, everyone. Today we're going to talk about trematodes 2, your liver and intestinal flukes. Okay, so first we have the liver flukes. We have 5 clinically important species, the 2 Phaseolas, the Clonorchis, and the 2 Opisthorchis species. Okay, hepatic flukes or liver flukes. Despite being called your hepatic or liver flukes, the adults actually reside in the bile duct. Okay, so this is the bile duct and these are your adults. And they will only appear in the liver parenchyma or the body of the liver itself if the infection is severe. Imagine if there are too many of these adult flukes in severe infections, they might crawl out into the liver parenchyma. Let's go to your Fasciola species. We have Fasciola hepatica and Fasciola gigantea. Let's go now to the Fasciola species life cycle. We harbor the adults in our biliary ducts and they will lay eggs that is discharged with the bile to the intestine and so the ova will be found in the stool. Humans are the definitive host since we harbor the adults in our bile ducts. Okay, so remember that Fasciola is part of the PEFF group of trematodes which lay an embryonated ova in the stool. Remember the rule that all trematodes will lay embryonated ova except for the PEFF. Okay? So Fasciola being part of that group will lay unembryonated eggs which will have to embryonate in water. And once embryonated, will release ciliated miracidium which will infect the first intermediate host which is always a snail. So another rule, all trematodes will have a first intermediate host, which is always a snail. So inside the body of the snail, it becomes the sac-like sporocyst, which will develop into aridia, which will produce the tailed stage cercaria. So your cercaria, notice the morphology. Okay, it has a long tail, which will classify it to being a Lophocercus cercaria. Okay, remember Lophocercus cercaria with a long tail. Okay, this cercaria will swim in the water and which will infect the second intermediate host. For the case of Fasciola, it's a water plant or aquatic plant. Okay, so it will insist into the aquatic plant as a metacercaria. Okay, and eating raw water plants will predispose us to have Fasciola infection. Okay, and so the infective stage to humans is the metacercaria insisted in the aquatic plants. Okay, so there are two species of your Fasciola. So let's compare them. We have your Fasciola hepatica and Fasciola gigantea. So which is which? Your Fasciola hepatica is the smaller one and it will infect sheep. Okay, so remember that sheep, Shepatica, hepatica. Okay, and they will live in the temperate areas. While your Fasciola gigantea, from its name, it's bigger, giant. Okay, Fasciola gigantea, it will infect cows. So to remember this better, cows are bigger than your sheep. Okay. So always the bigger one is the Fasciola gigantea and they will live in the tropical areas. Again, I mentioned Fasciola species are liver flukes. They're called liver flukes, but actually the adults are found in where? The bile ducts. Okay, the two species, Fasciola hepatica, the common name is sheep liver fluke. Remember, Shepatica. Okay, sheep has many letter E's, and so to relate that, the other common name is temperate liver fluke with many E's as well. Okay, remember Fasciola shepatica and temperate liver flukes with many E's. Okay, now let's go to the other one, Fasciola gigantea. The common name is giant liver fluke. It's very obvious, giant, gigantea, which will live in the tropics. So it's called the tropical liver fluke. So how will you identify Fasciola adults if you recover them? Okay, so a unique feature of your Fasciola adults is a cephalic cone. So what is this cephalic cone? It's actually this triangular or conical shape or structure in the anterior portion. Okay, this is the cephalic cone. It really looks like a cone. Okay, so let's compare fasciola versus your other flukes. Okay, your fasciola is dorso-ventrally flattened like all flukes, but has a cephalic cone. Also note that the ventral sucker right here is close to the oral sucker. Your paragonimus is also dorso-ventrally flattened but has no cephalic cone. And your ventral sucker is near the midline. Okay. Schistosoma, of course, is not flattened. Okay, it's tubular and has no cephalic cone. Okay, so only fasciola has cephalic cone. Other than the cephalic cone, your fasciola has also one very unique characteristic. Of all the trematodes, it's the only one with a branched intestine. So this is a real-life specimen of your fasciola with its oral sucker injected black ink to be able to demonstrate your branched intestine. So when you look at this specimen, okay, you can see that the intestine is clearly branching. So this is another image of your fasciola fluke. Okay, so this one, okay, you can see clearly the cephalic cone, and this one is dorsoventrally flipped. Okay, so as you can see the underside of the worm, you can see that the ventral sucker is really near the oral sucker, which are all in the cephalic cone area. Okay, so how will you differentiate the two fasciola species? Your fasciola hepatica is always smaller with prominent shoulder. So what do I mean by this shoulder? This shoulder is pointed by the red arrow. So this is the area where your cephalic cone will join the body. Okay, so this shoulder area is very prominent in hepatica and is less prominent in fasciola gigantica. Okay, so what is the difference again? Fasciola hepatica, smaller, gigantica, bigger. And fasciola hepatica, prominent shoulder. Fasciola gigantica, less prominent shoulder. Okay. Okay. Now I want you to identify these worms. They both have cephalic cone, which is unique to what? Your fasciola species. Okay. Now, which is which? Which is fasciola hepatica? Which is fasciola gigantica? The worm on the left is smaller with prominent shoulders. So this must be fasciola hepatica, correct. And now, the worm on the right is bigger with less prominent shoulders. So this must be fasciola gigantica. So let's label the parts of the fasciola adult worm. First, you have the most anterior oral sucker. Then next to it is the muscular pharynx. And then we have the branched intestine. Note that the special characteristic of your fasciola adult worm is the cephalic cone and the branched intestine because all of the trematodes have simple unbranched intestine except your fasciola adult worm. And you have the ventral sucker pointed by the orange arrow. Now let's go to the reproductive organs. Pointed by the red arrow is the uterus. The green arrow is the single branched ovary. Pointed by the blue arrows are the paired, branched, or dendritic testes. And your vitellaria will extend from the shoulder to the very end. Okay, now identify. The red arrow is pointing to the oral sucker. Your orange arrow is pointing to the ventral sucker. Your blue arrow is pointing to the paired testis, which is, what is the morphology of the testis? It is branched or dendritic. And your green arrow will point to the vitellaria. Let's continue identifying the parts of your fasciola adult worm. The red arrow is pointing to the pharynx. Your white arrow is pointing to the intestine, which is branched. Okay, only this fluke has branched intestine, fasciola. Okay, green arrow pointing to the uterus, and the blue arrow is pointing to the single branched ovary. Let's review the structures of your fasciola adult. The intestine is branched, okay? The paired testes are branched or dendritic. Your single ovary is also branched, while your vitellaria will extend from the shoulder to the end of the body. Okay, what's so special again about your fasciola adult? Is the only one with a cephalic cone and shoulder. Okay, let's review what's unique to your fasciola. It has a cephalic cone, a shoulder, and it's the only one with a branched intestine. The diagnostic stage of this worm is the unembryonated ova. The adults will lay eggs in the bile duct, which will be secreted with the bile into the intestine, showing up in the stool. Okay, so let's talk about the fasciola unembryonated ova. All trematodes will lay embryonated egg except for the PEFF group, which includes Paragonimus, Echinostoma, Fasciola, this is what we're talking about, and Fasciolopsis. So, Fasciola is part of the PEF group, which will lay unembryonated eggs. Note, it's hard to distinguish these unembryonated eggs from each other because they are yellowish, ovoid, operculated, okay? And they will be seen in the stool, except for your Paragonimus. But sometimes when you swallow the sputum, it can also be seen in the stool. So it's very confusing, right? But actually, you can differentiate Paragonimus because Paragonimus is the only one with this abopercular thickening or a thickening of the shell on its posterior end. All the rest will have no thickening. So your Echinostoma, your Fasciola, and Fasciolopsis is virtually indistinguishable from each other. So the Fasciola ova again is large, ovoid, and operculated. It's yellowish brown in color. Okay, it is unembryonated when laid in the biliary tract, and it will be found in the stool because it is discharged with the bile and it goes to the intestine, and so it will be found in the stool. Okay, it is unembryonated and it still has to embryonate in water to later release the miracidium. Okay, so Fasciola ova, Echinostoma ova, and Fasciolopsis ova virtually indistinguishable from each other except your Paragonimus. Okay, your Paragonimus has abopercular thickening, but this has no thickening. The posterior end is not thickened. Okay, so as you can see, the ova of Fasciola is yellowish brown, ovoid, operculated, and unembryonated. It's quite similar to your Fasciolopsis and your Echinostoma. So, if you find this in the stool in a patient with abdominal symptoms, maybe ask for a history of eating raw aquatic plants because that will point to most likely Fasciola or Fasciolopsis. So let's go now to the intermediate host of your Fasciola hepatica. So, as usual, and as always, the first intermediate host of all flukes is always a snail. So, we've been emphasizing this again and again. I might ask this in the examination. Okay, particularly for Fasciola hepatica, the snails of genus Limnaea. So, these snails are aquatic snails. So, the cercaria from the snail can easily infect the second intermediate host, which are aquatic plants or water plants. Okay, because the snail and the aquatic plants live in the same environment. So which aquatic vegetations or which water plants are the second intermediate host? We have the Ipomea obscura. In the Philippines, we call this kangkong. And the Sturtium officinale or watercress. I'll show you pictures later. Okay, the first intermediate host, again, Limnaea snails. These snails are aquatic and they spend most of their time in water. And you can see here that they live in the same environment as the second intermediate host. And the cercaria from the snail can easily infect the water plants. And in the water plants, they become the metacercaria. So what are these water plants? The second intermediate host of Fasciola is water plants, okay? particularly Nasturtium officinale or watercress. This is a vegetable. Another second intermediate host is Opemia obscura, or more commonly in the Philippines, we call this kangkong. So dishes with raw water plants are very delicious, as you can see in the screen. Okay, but there's a risk for infection when you eat these dishes with raw water plants. So always cook or thoroughly wash water vegetables before eating. So some metacercaria can also be shed in water. So from the plants, it became encysted metacercaria, but it can fall into the water. It can be shed in the water. So drinking dirty water with your metacercaria can also transmit the infection. So please drink clean water, boil the water. Okay. So let's discuss the pathogenesis of your fascioliasis. Okay, so how does your fasciola cause an infection? Actually, there are three phases of your fasciola infection. First, we have the acute or invasive phase. This is the period when the metacercaria migrates to the liver. Okay, so you eat the water plants with metacercaria and you get infected. Okay, from the intestine, it will penetrate into the peritoneal cavity and it will penetrate also the covering of the liver, which is the Glisson's capsule. And from there, it will gain entry into the liver parenchyma. And finally, it will end up in the bile ducts where they will develop into adults and lay eggs. So this is the path. Okay. So in this acute or invasive phase, there will be high fever because of the infection. Of course, when the parasites migrate through the liver, they can cause tissue destruction, and as a result, your liver will be inflamed. And when the liver is inflamed, there would be increase in size or hepatomegaly. From the migrating parasites, you can probably see in the CBC increase in what cells? What WBC? Eosinophils. Okay, so when you see that in the CBC, when you see high eosinophils, suspect parasitism. Okay, so why does this all happen? This is because of the larva migrating in the liver. There will be tissue destruction. As a result, there will be inflammation. And as the worms migrate, they may release their metabolites and their waste products. Okay, so they will produce local or systemic toxic or allergic reactions from those chemicals from the worm, which will result in urticaria. And sometimes, when there are many worms migrating, they might erode into the blood vessels, causing internal bleeding and resulting into anemia. And this phase, your acute or invasive phase, will usually last 3 to 4 months. So the next phase is the chronic or latent phase. It's an asymptomatic phase, which represents the period when the parasite has already reached the bile duct. So why is it asymptomatic now? Because the flu can actually stimulate your immune system to produce immunosuppressive substances. So it can calm the immune system, and so the inflammation will be gone and the other symptoms will be gone also. And they will mature into the adults in the bile duct. They will lay their eggs, which are discharged into the bile and will go to the intestine, and you will find the eggs in the feces. So in this asymptomatic period, maybe the only thing that you can find in the labs in the CBC is the increased eosinophils. Okay? However, if severe, if there are many worms present, it can cause your obstruction of the bile ducts, and even cause inflammation again of the bile ducts and even scarring or fibrosis. This is also the period when the worms can re-enter the liver, burrow holes in the liver, and create large abscesses in the liver. Okay, so let's show you a little picture. Okay, so this is a liver with Fasciola adults. Okay, the worms have already re-entered the liver. Your blue arrow will point to the cephalic cone. So this cephalic cone will show you that it's really a Fasciola fluke. Okay, another picture of your Fasciola flukes with cephalic cones in the surface of your liver. Okay. There's also a disease called Halzone. This Halzone is actually a pharyngeal fascioliasis. This is brought about by eating raw sheep or goat liver. And this is a popular cuisine in your Mediterranean regions. And the ingestion of the liver infected with the adults in the liver, okay, after eating that, the adults get lodged in the pharyngeal mucosa. So the adults have suckers, right? So they will attach to the mucosa of the pharynx, okay, causing infection, swelling, and even obstruction if the swelling is large, okay. And it can cause, because of the obstruction, it can cause difficulty in breathing, difficulty in swallowing, sometimes deafness, deafness, because the fluke will go to the nasal fossa and even the eustachian tube, and those tubes are found in the pharynx, okay? So it can cause deafness and asphyxiation or suffocation. So don't be like her, don't eat raw sheep or goat liver. Okay, that's risky. It can lead you to have Halzone or pharyngeal fascioliasis. There's also a condition called false fascioliasis. Okay, how does this come about? Okay, for example, when you eat a raw liver with fasciola adults and the fasciola adults are laying the ova, okay, and so after digesting this liver, this raw liver, your ova from the liver, from the fasciola adults, the ova from there will be seen in the feces or stool, even if you are really not infected, okay? But you recover the ova of the fasciola, and this can lead to misdiagnosis. You do not have the infection, you just ate the raw liver with the fasciola adults and the ova. So you can find the ova in the stool, causing false fascioliasis. Ectopic infection can also happen in your fasciola infection because remember that the larva will need to migrate, right, to reach the liver. But the larva will get lost during migration and can possibly infect other organs. For example, when they get to the peritoneal cavity, they can get lost, they can penetrate the diaphragm and go into the lungs, and sometimes it can even go under the skin, the subcutaneous tissue, in the brain, in the eyes, etc. So, although this is very rare, it can still happen. So, as in the scene in the picture, you can see ocular fascioliasis, ectopic infection of your fasciola. You can see the fasciola worm in the eye. Okay. Sometimes it can also cause subcutaneous tissue infection. So if you biopsy this, you can find a larva or adult of your fasciola worm. Okay. So what about the other species? Your Fasciola gigantica. The common name is giant liver fluke or tropical liver fluke. Okay, you can find high cases of this worm in which the places that raise cattle or cows and water buffaloes. Remember, hepatica, sheep. Okay, sheepatica, sheep raising countries, while your Fasciola gigantica, cattle or cows. Okay, so let's compare the two. Okay, again, review. Fasciola gigantica is bigger than hepatica and it has a less prominent shoulder. While your Fasciola hepatica is smaller in general, but only one thing is bigger and more prominent. It's the shoulder. Okay, small worm, prominent shoulder, hepatica. Big worm, less prominent shoulder, Fasciola gigantica. Again, Fasciola gigantica, in general, adult worm is larger, larger ventral sucker, more branching intestine, branches of the ovary are longer and more numerous, highly branched testes, and larger eggs. Okay, so in general, everything is bigger than your F. hepatica except the shoulder. So the shoulder will be the only thing more prominent in the hepatica. For the treatment of fascioliasis, the drug of choice is triclabendazole. Remember this triclabendazole because it's the only one unique to the treatment of flukes because the other flukes will use praziquantel. Only fasciola will use triclabendazole as the drug of choice. Your butylenol is the other option. Okay? For the prevention of Fasciola infection, washing or cooking of vegetables is very important. Also, boiling of drinking water because the metacercaria can be shed in water also, and drinking dirty water can be a mode of transmission of Fasciola infection. Elimination of snail hosts because the snails are the first intermediate host, and cutting the life cycle will also eliminate the infection. While in places with many people infected with Fasciola, chemotherapy, mass chemotherapy with triclabendazole is used. Okay. So let's go now to the last two species of your liver flukes, your Clonorchis and your Opisthorchis species. Let's go now to the life cycle of your Clonorchis sinensis. The definitive hosts are humans because we harbor the adults in the biliary duct. They lay embryonated eggs, which will be discharged with the bile and into the intestine, which will be found in the stool. So it's not part of the PEFF group. So it lays embryonated eggs in the feces. So these embryonated eggs still need to be washed ashore because the snail intermediate host is a land snail. So the infective stage to the snail is not miracidium but the embryonated ova, which is ingested by the snail. So the miracidium is only released inside the body of the snail, in the gut of the snail, and this miracidium will penetrate the gut and go into the tissues, becomes a sporocyst, and develops into aridia, which produces the tailed stage, cercaria. Note the morphology of your cercaria. It has a long tail with fins. So what do you call that morphology of the cercaria? It's Pleuronlophocercus. The only one with a Pleuronlophocercus tail. Okay. So after that, the cercaria will now be infective to the second intermediate host, which is the freshwater fish. And inside the body of the freshwater fish, it will insist as the metacercaria. So remember, the second intermediate host is the freshwater fish, and the mode of transmission will be the eating of raw freshwater fish. And the infective stage to humans is the encysted metacercaria in the body of the freshwater fish. What about the life cycle of Opisthorchis? It's quite similar to your Clonorchis. Your adults will be in the bile duct, and so the humans are the definitive host because we have the adults in our body. They will lay the embryonated eggs, which will be passed again into the bile, go to the intestine, and then go to the stool. Okay, these embryonated eggs is the infective stage to the first intermediate host, which is also a land snail. Okay, so these embryonated eggs need to be washed ashore to the land snail, and the land snail will eat the embryonated eggs, which then, inside the body of the snail, it will hatch into the ciliated miracidium. This miracidium will penetrate the tissues of the snail to become the sporocyst, which will produce the ridia, which will in turn produce the tailed stage, cercaria. Can you tell me the morphology of your cercaria? The morphology is also Pleuronlophocercus. It has a long tail with fins, okay, similar to your Clonorchis. So Cercaria is the infective stage to your second intermediate host, which is similar to Clonorchis, which is also a freshwater fish. And it will insist as a metacercaria in the body of the fish. And now humans, we get infected by eating raw freshwater fish. And so the infective stage to humans is what is insisted in the body of your freshwater fish, the metacercaria. So I hope you got that. So let's look at the characteristics of your Clonorchis sinensis adult, the structure of the fluke. As you can see, The vitellaria is in the middle two-thirds of the body. So this feature is shared by both your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis. So this is a really very reliable feature in identifying both worms, your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis adults. Vitellaria at the middle two-thirds of the body. Now let's label the parts of a Clonorchis sinensis adult fluke. Okay, the oral sucker is pointed by the red arrow right here. Next to it is the muscular pharynx, which connects to the unbranched intestine. Remember, all other trematodes are unbranched, except for fasciola, which are branched intestines. Okay, so let's label the part of the Clonorchis sinensis adult fluke. I mentioned that you can only find the vitellaria at the middle one-third of the body, a very reliable feature when identifying Clonorchis adults. But note also that Opisthorchis will have a similarly located vitellaria. So how will you differentiate them? I'll tell you the difference later. Okay, let's now point to the single lobed ovary. You can also find the uterus in the middle one-third of the body. They are brown and filled with eggs. You can also see that in the posterior part of the body, you have there the paired testes, which are, what is the morphology of the testis? Branched or dendritic. Remember this testis because this is very important in differentiating the species of Clonorchis and Opisthorchis. Now, let's review first the structures of your Clonorchis adult. The intestine is, of course, it is unbranched. Only Fasciola has branched intestine. The paired testes are, what do they look like? They are branched or dendritic. The single ovary is lobed or lobulated. And the vitellaria will be only found in the middle one-thirds of the body. The common name of your Clonorchis is Chinese liver fluke. Let's now look at your Opisthorchis adult fluke. Notice that it also has vitellaria on its middle one-third like Clonorchis. Do you notice already what's the difference? Okay, I'll tell you later. First, let's label the parts of your Opisthorchis adult. You have your oral sucker, the red arrow, pharynx right next to the oral sucker, and your intestine is always unbranched. Let's go now to the reproductive organs. I've mentioned that the vitellaria is only found at the middle one-third of the body. Notice the lobed ovary, and in the middle you have the brown uterus filled with eggs. So as you can notice, everything is quite similar to your Clonorchis except the lobulated pair of testes. So this is how you differentiate your Opisthorchis from your Clonorchis adult. Your Opisthorchis has lobulated testes and your Clonorchis has branched testes. I hope you still remember what your Clonorchis looks like. So this is how you will differentiate them by the testes. Let's review now the Opisthorchis adult fluke. The intestine is unbranched, okay? The paired testes are lobulated, so this is how you will differentiate it from your Clonorchis. The single ovary is also lobulated, and the vitellaria is only found at the middle one-third of the body, similar to your Clonorchis. Note that Opisthorchis adults is smaller than your Clonorchis. So let's now compare these two worms side by side. Both are slender worms with vitellaria at the middle one-third of the body. How will you differentiate them? They have the same morphology except for the testes. Okay, your Clonorchis has branched testes while your Opisthorchis has lobulated testes. So this is how you differentiate them. Look at the testes. I want you now to identify this worm. Vitellaria is at the middle one-third. Could it be Clonorchis or Opisthorchis? I want you to think about it, okay? How will you differentiate? Look at the testis. It's lobulated. So both these worms are Opisthorchis. So you have two Opisthorchis species. You have your Opisthorchis vivereni, which lives in Thailand and Southeast Asia, giving it the common name of Southeast Asian liver fluke, while the other species is Opisthorchis filineus, living in the Eastern Europe and Siberia, and its most common hosts are house cats, which gives them the common name of cat liver fluke. Okay? Okay. So how will you differentiate your Opisthorchis species since there are two of them? Again, similar to how you differentiate your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis, again, look at the testis. So the testis is the key. Opisthorchis filineus has a lobed testis, but it's not so deeply lobed. Meanwhile, your Opisthorchis vivereni, notice that the testes are very deeply lobed. So that's how you differentiate the two Opisthorchis species. Okay, so let's apply what we know from differentiating your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis species. Okay, so all these flukes are slender worms and they have vitellaria at their middle one-third. So they could all be Clonorchis or Opisthorchis. Look at worm C. It has a branched testis. So this worm is Clonorchis. Okay, so that's correct, Clonorchis sinensis. While worm A and worm B has both lobed testes, so they are from the Opisthorchis species. So which is which? You can see that worm B's testes are more deeply lobed, so it must be Opisthorchis vivereni, which leaves worm A to be Opisthorchis filineus. So that's how we identify them and differentiate them from each other. So for you to easier remember which is which in Opisthorchis, okay, I made a mnemonic. Vivereni testis are the very deeply lobed. Okay, sounds like very vivereni. Okay, hope you got that. So let's go to the diagnostic stage of your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis. Remember, the adults are in the bile ducts. They will discharge their ova with the bile and will go to the intestine, which will then be passed out into the stool. So it's important that we can identify what type of parasite it is from looking at the ova. So your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis ova is embryonated. Remember, it's not a part of the PEFF group of trematodes. So the ova is embryonated when laid. Remember, this ova does not need to embryonate in water and is directly eaten by your land snails. So it's ovoid, yellowish brown with an operculum. Remember, all trematodes will have an operculum except your schistosoma. Okay? And this operculum or lid will fit into the thickened rim of your eggshell called the shoulder. So those pointed by the arrow is the shoulder. To easier remember, it will look like a teapot with shoulders. So this is the shoulder and imagine this is the operculum. Okay. Another striking characteristic of your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis ova is the presence of a small protuberance or knob at the posterior end of the shell. Okay, so this is quite unique and you will be able to differentiate your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis from another trematode ova that looks exactly just like this. And that is what we will discover later when we discuss your intestinal flukes. But remember, Clonorchis and Opisthorchis ova has a small protuberance or knob at the posterior end of the shell. So these are images of your Clonorchis or Opisthorchis ova under the microscope. You can see it has an operculum fitted into a thickened rim or shoulder. It also has a posterior knob or protuberance. So I mentioned Clonorchis or Opisthorchis because you cannot distinguish them. So when I show you this egg with a shoulder and a posterior knob or protuberance, you will answer Clonorchis or Opisthorchis ova. Either is acceptable. So the intermediate host of your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis are the following. The first intermediate host, as always, is a snail. Clonorchis has Paraphosphorolus and Bulimus, while your Opisthorchis has Bithynia. The second intermediate host are freshwater fish, particularly the Cyprinidae family. So if you're wondering what kind of freshwater fish is the second intermediate host of your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis, these are the Cyprinidae family of freshwater fish. So how will your Clonorchiasis and Opisthorchiasis present? In light infections, the patient is usually asymptomatic or may have non-specific gastrointestinal symptoms such as the following: fatigue, changes in appetite, diarrhea, abdominal pain, even liver enlargement. Okay. However, in your heavier infections, bile duct obstruction may be caused by your adults because, as you can see, the adult flukes will live in the bile duct. So obstruction is very possible. And obstructed bile duct, and even, for example, when these adult flukes will migrate lower into the bile duct and gain entry into the cystic duct and into the gallbladder, the bile cannot come out anymore, okay? And the bile will become supersaturated. And when the bile cannot flow and it's supersaturated, that is a fertile ground for the formation of gallstones or cholelithiasis. And the mere entry of your adult flukes into the gallbladder is enough to stimulate gallbladder inflammation or cholecystitis. In chronic infections, the adults will provoke intense inflammatory and proliferative changes in the biliary epithelium. So your adult flukes live in the bile ducts and they can irritate the biliary epithelium the longer that they are in there. And they will provoke intense inflammation, and continuous inflammation may evoke changes in the epithelium, which is a fertile ground for carcinoma or even scarring or fibrosis of the bile ducts or the liver if the adults may escape into the liver and cause fibrosis in the liver. I mentioned that they live in the bile ducts, and your bile ducts are connected to the gallbladder via the cystic duct and also the pancreatic ducts. And so, some adult flukes may also swim into the pancreas and cause maybe obstruction or irritation of the pancreas and will cause acute pancreatitis. So I mentioned to you there will be some changes in the bile duct if the parasite is present in there for a long time. So to your left is a normal portal triad. You know in your histology that the portal triad is where you can find your bile ducts in the sections of the liver. Okay, so this at the sides is your liver. Those are your hepatocytes. And this pale area in the center is connective tissue with your portal vein, thin-walled portal vein, thick-walled hepatic artery with blood inside. So you know that's the hepatic artery. And this is your bile duct. Notice that the bile duct is normally very thin, a single layer of simple cuboidal epithelium. Compare it to your left. This is the abnormal liver with Clonorchis or Opisthorchis infection. You can see the portal vein is similar looking. There's no changes there. Your hepatic artery looks the same also. However, look now at your bile duct. What do you notice? From the simple cuboidal epithelium to the left is the normal. In the right side, the bile duct is thickened and it looks scarred. It's a fibrotic bile duct. And sometimes you can even find the adult flukes inside the fibrotic bile duct. So this is a clear evidence that adults provoke intense inflammatory and proliferative changes of the bile duct wall. Okay, and so there will be scarring or fibrosis of your bile ducts. It has also been found that Infection with your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis may lead to cholangiocarcinoma. So what is this? It's a adenocarcinoma of your bile ducts and gallbladder. So Opisthorchis and Clonorchis have carcinogenic potential, possibly from the worm products like their metabolites and their toxic wastes, and they can initiate the transformation of the bile duct epithelium. So when I ask in the examination, which of the following parasites, which of the following flukes can cause cholangiocarcinoma, you answer Opisthorchis or Clonorchis. For the treatment of your Clonorchiasis and Opisthorchiasis, praziquantel or a combination of praziquantel albendazole may be used. In prevention, chemotherapy of infected individuals, health education and telling people that they should sufficiently cook their fish before eating and avoid eating raw fish. Also, educating the people to have proper human waste disposal. Okay. Let's continue on to the intestinal flukes. We have 6 clinically important species, the Phaseolopsis echinostomma, its close relative Orthopheckinostomum, Heterophis and its close relative Metagonimus, and the only one who lives in the large intestine, you have the Gastrodiscoides hominis. Us humans are the definitive host because we harbor the adults in our small intestine. And in the intestine, they will lay their eggs that we can find in the stool. So it's part of the PAFF group of trematodes which lay unembryonated ova in the stool. So these unembryonated eggs can be recovered in the stool and is deposited in water and they will embryonate there. So they will embryonate in water and once embryonated, they will hatch the ciliated miracidium, which is the infective stage 2, the first intermediate host, which in all trematodes is always a snail. Okay? So once penetrated in the body of the snail, they will become the sac-like sporocyst, which becomes the rhidia, which will release the tailed stage, cercaria. Notice the cercaria, what is the morphology? It has a long tail. So it is a Lophocercus cercaria. Now the cercaria is infective to the second intermediate host, which in the case of Phaseolopsis is aquatic plants or water plants. Similar to, do you remember something? Do you remember the trematode which has the second intermediate host which is also a aquatic plant? Okay, you're right, Fasciola. Now we get infected if we eat the raw aquatic plants with encysted metacercaria inside. So the infective stage 2, the humans is the metacercaria encysted in the second intermediate host, which is again what? The water plants. So humans, I mentioned humans are the definitive host, but the most common definitive host is actually the pigs. Okay, I hope you got that. Let's continue. Before learning Phaseolopsis structure, we must first review its close relative, the Phaseola adult structure, because it will share many similar parts with your Phaseolopsis. First, the intestine is branched. Only Phaseola has a branched intestine. Paired testes are also branched or dendritic. The single ovary is also branched. And the vitellaria will extend from the shoulder to the very end of the body. The unique characteristic again of your Fasciola adult is the cephalic cone and the presence of the shoulder. So let's now go to the Fasciolopsis adult structure. So it's obvious to see that what's different from Fasciola is that Fasciolopsis has no cephalic cone and shoulder. Okay, as you can see here, it's smooth. There's no cephalic cone. But what's similar to Fasciola is that the paired testes are also branched. They are branch or dendritic and they will look like coral reefs. Your ovary is also branched. Your vitellaria will extend from the anterior part of the worm to the posterior. So what's different now is the intestine is unbranched. Okay? Note that only Fasciola has branched intestine. So I hope you got that. Everything else is similar to fasciola except that there is no cephalic cone and shoulder and the intestine is unbranched. So, putting them side by side, the two main differences are Fasciolopsis has no cephalic cone and shoulder, and the intestine is unbranched. The testis is also similar to your fasciola. It's branched, but the structure is like, they're like coral reefs. Okay? I hope you got that. Another characteristic of your Fasciolopsis adult is that it has a bigger ventral sucker compared to its oral sucker. It's very different. Look at this. It's the oral sucker is very small, while your ventral sucker is very large. Okay? And when comparing this ventral sucker of your Fasciolopsis to your fasciola, it's also bigger. So Fasciolopsis also has bigger ventral sucker than your fasciola. Let's compare them. Your Fasciolopsis has a bigger ventral sucker compared to your fasciola. As you can see in the picture, bigger, smaller. Okay? To emphasize this, you see this is a real-life specimen of a Fasciolopsis fluke. It's turned upside down to expose its ventral surface. Observe the large ventral sucker. Okay? You can see a clearer picture of your Fasciolopsis adult. Again, there is no cephalic cone and shoulder. The testes are branched, which looks like coral reefs. The ovary is also branched, and the vitellaria will extend from the anterior to posterior end of the worm. Now, also note the large ventral sucker. Fasciolopsis buchski is also called the giant intestinal fluke because among all pathogenic intestinal flukes to humans, this is the biggest. You can clearly see it with your naked eye. Remember that Fasciolopsis egg is part of the PEFF group of trematodes which lay an embryonated egg, and all their ova are indistinguishable from each other except your Paragonimus, okay? And they are all yellowish brown, ovoid, and operculated, okay? It can become confusing since all of them can be found in the stool, okay? Putting these eggs side by side, you can see that PAFF ova are all unembryonated and they are indistinguishable from each other because they are all yellowish brown, they're all ovoid, and they all have operculum. Okay? Paragonimus is an exception because it has a posterior thickening. All of the others have no posterior thickening. So you cannot distinguish these three apart. Again, remember that so that in the evals, if I ask you to identify these, any of these, just answer any of the three worms, either Fasciolopsis, Echinostoma, or Fasciola, and I will consider the answer to be correct. Get it? The first intermediate host of all trematodes is the snail. So Fasciolopsis, first intermediate host, is also a snail. And they belong to this species, Segmentina or Hipeutis. Fasciolopsis has many second intermediate hosts and they are all water plants or aquatic plants. Okay, so first one you have Trappa bicornis or water caltrop. And we also have Eleucharis tuberosa, which is also called your water chestnut. We also have Ipomeo obscura or obscure morning glory. In the Philippines, we call this kangkong. It's a very delicious vegetable. We also have this Nymphea lotus or the lotus plant. And this part near the seeds is the edible part. So let's review the many second intermediate hosts of your Fasciolopsis buschii. This is Trappa bicornis or water caltrop. This is Eleucharis tuberosa or water chestnut. Next one, we have Ipomeo obscura or obscure morning glory or kangkong. And you have Nymphea lotus or just simply the lotus plant. So, eating all those mentioned second intermediate host raw will increase the risk of getting your Fasciolopsis infection. So, what then are the clinical manifestations if you ever get Fasciolopsis infection? So, you may have enteritis, ulcer formation, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. So, basically, abdominal or intestinal symptoms because of the adults attached to the intestinal walls. So, you can see these following images. You can see adult flukes attached to the walls of the intestine. So they are strongly attached to the walls by their oral and ventral suckers. And because of this, the mucosa can become inflamed or even ulcerated. And these bleeding ulcers can lead to blood loss and even anemia. Okay? In severe infections, because of their size, they're the giant intestinal fluke, right? In severe infections where there are many flukes present, they can cause intestinal obstruction. Emphasizing the big size of your Fasciolopsis adult, imagine in severe infection, there are many of these worms, and because of their size, they can cause intestinal obstruction. Infection with your Fasciolopsis buski can also lead to malnutrition because you can see the flukes will compete with the host for nutrients. So imagine if there are many of those flukes in the intestine, can't anymore absorb the nutrients because it will all go to the worms. Okay. In some patients, vitamin B12 deficiency has also been reported. And if there are heavy infection with these worms, if there are many worms present, there can also be allergic reactions to the metabolic waste by the fluke. And these metabolic waste of the fluke will get absorbed into the blood. So these are foreign materials. They're foreign chemicals. And the body can respond by having allergies. Okay? Also, since there are many of the worms attached to the intestine, there is malabsorption. You cannot anymore absorb protein in the gastrointestinal tract. And the most important protein in our diet is the albumin. And this albumin, this protein, will pull the fluid inside the vessels. So if there is no albumin, the fluid will leak out of the vessel and go outside to the surrounding tissues. And so there will be edema. Okay? And it will also cause ascites. Your ascites is a kind of edema which occurs in the abdominal cavity. So there will be fluid accumulation in the abdominal cavity. And it will look like this. Treatment of Fasciolopsis uses praziquantel like other trematodes to prevent this infection. Longer time between the harvest of aquatic plants and eating of the plants is advised. This will lead to the drying out of the metacercaria. You have to dry the plants to dry out the metacercaria so they will die. Okay? If you cannot wait anymore, you can wash your plants properly. You can also boil these plants or cook them properly. Okay? And of course, you have to dispose our human waste and even pig waste properly because pig is the other most common definitive host of your Fasciolopsis species. Okay, let's go now to the next species of your intestinal flukes, the Echinostoma elocanum. Let's go directly to the life cycle. Us humans are the definitive host because we have the adults in our intestine and they will lay unembryonated ova. Remember, all trematodes lay embryonated egg except for the PEFF. That includes letter E, Echinostoma elocanum. Okay? So, this unembryonated egg is passed in the stool, will embryonate in water, and once embryonated, will hatch the ciliated miracidium, which is infective to the first intermediate host. Again, in all trematodes, the first intermediate host is always a snail. Okay? Inside the snail, it becomes the sporocyst and then becomes the rhidia, which produces the cercaria or the tailed stage. Okay? You can see the cercaria morphology. Can you please identify? It has a long tail. So, right, it is a Lophocercus cercaria. This cercaria is free swimming and is infective to the second intermediate host, which is in the case of Echinostoma elocanum, another snail. So, this is the only fluke which will have two snails as its intermediate host. Okay? The mode of transmission is eating the raw second intermediate host, which is the snail. So eating raw snails will predispose you to have Echinostoma infection. Okay? And what is insisted inside the body of the snail is the Metacercaria, and this Metacercaria is the infective stage to us humans. In some cultures, eating snails is a delicacy, but eating raw snails will predispose a person to be infected with echinostoma, so be very careful. Before we go to the echinostoma, we will first review the Clonorchis and Opisthorchis adult, since they are both slender-looking flukes with vitellaria at the middle one-third of the body. Because your echinostoma is also quite similar. It's a slender fluke, okay? But the difference of your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis is just the testis. Okay, Clonorchis, branch testis. Opisthorchis, lobulated testis. So what about the echinostoma adult? I showed you the Clonorchis and Opisthorchis before because they are slender-looking worms. Your echinostoma adult is also a slender worm. So when you see a slender-looking fluke, check its vitellaria. If the vitellaria is only at the middle one-third of the body, it could be Clonorchis or Opisthorchis. But if the vitellaria will extend from the anterior to the posterior end of the body, it could be echinostoma. So let's go now to the parts of your echinostoma adult. The intestine is, although you can't see it clearly, but it's safe to say that it is always unbranched because only fasciola has branched intestine. The paired testes are lobulated. And the single ovary is round. The vitellaria, this is the identifying characteristic. It extends from the anterior end to the posterior end of the body. Let's now review your echinostoma adult. The intestine is unbranched. The paired testes are lobed or lobulated. The single ovary you have here is round. And the vitellaria will extend from the anterior to the posterior or extends up to the tail end. And the unique characteristic of your echinostoma adult, you have any idea? Okay, I'll tell you. It has a circumoral disc. Basically, its name echinostoma, echino and stoma. Okay, it has spiny mouth, echinostoma. Okay, its common name is the Garrison's fluke because Garrison is the one who discovered the first case of this parasite. So the Garrison is the name of the one who discovered the first case of echinostomiasis. So what is the circumoral disc then? It will surround the oral sucker of the worm and it contains 49 to 51 rows of spines. It functions for attachment. So these spines will latch on to the intestinal wall. And the circumoral disc will help in identifying the echinostoma adult from the other adult trematodes. So the circumoral disc is unique to your echinostoma. This is the circumoral disc, and when you zoom in, it will look like this. It has 49 to 51 rows of spines, which functions for what again? Attachment. A close relative of your echinostoma is the Artifickinostomum malayanum fluke. It has a very similar life cycle to your echinostoma. The vitellaria also extend from the anterior to the tail end. And there is also the presence of the circumoral disc. So how will you differentiate then your Artifickinostomum from your echinostoma? Well, your Artifickinostomum has a more rounded tail and the testes are very deeply lobed. And I will show you later the difference of these worms side by side. So let's now compare your echinostoma versus your Artifickinostomum side by side. So these are just diagrams, but it will show you the difference quite clearly. Your echinostoma is a slender worm with a pointed tail end, okay? And the testes are lobed, as you can see. Comparing it to Artifickinostomum, the Artifickinostomum has a more rounded tail, okay? Pointed, rounded. The tail is more rounded. The testes are also more deeply lobed. So you can see the lobulations of the testes is very deep, okay? It's very deeply lobed compared to the echinostoma, okay? So what is this worm then? Is this echinostoma or Artifickinostomum? Both will have the circumoral disc. But this fluke has a pointed tail end and the testes are not deeply lobed. They're just lobed. Okay, so this is probably your Echinostoma adult fluke. The first intermediate host is always a snail for all flukes, particularly in Echinostoma, the following snail species. What's unique to your Echinostoma compared to other flukes is that its second intermediate host is also a snail. So it's the only fluke species which has two snail intermediate hosts. The first intermediate host, snail. Second intermediate host, also a snail. Okay, and the second intermediate host are these following snails, Pila luzonica and Vivipara angularis. So the close relative of your Echinostoma will also have two snail intermediate hosts. The first intermediate host is a snail of the following species, and the second intermediate host is also a snail of the following species. So I hope you remember that both Echinostoma and Artifichinostoma has two snail intermediate hosts. The Echinostoma ova is yellowish brown, it's ovoid, and it's operculated. It is unembryonated when laid because it's part of the PEFF group of trematodes. Letter E will stand for Echinostoma. And as I've mentioned repeatedly, it cannot be differentiated from the ova of your fasciola and fasciolopsis. Okay? Also note that your Artifichinostoma, it's very closely related to your Echinostoma, right? So its ova is also very similar to your Echinostoma ova, fasciola, and fasciolopsis. Mild infection with Echinostoma will present as asymptomatic in majority of cases. Others will present with abdominal pain and diarrhea. In severe infections, inflammatory lesions and ulcers at the attachment site of the worm can be present because remember the worm has this circumoral disc with 49 to 51 rows of spines. Okay. And in these ulcers where the worm is attached, it can bleed. And these bleeding ulcers may lead to your anemia. The treatment for echinostomiasis is praziquantel, similar to other flukes. The prevention of this infection is avoid eating the raw snails because the raw snails is the second intermediate host. Let's proceed to the last two flukes found in the small intestine. You have Heterophis and its close relative Metagonimus yokogawai. Humans are the definitive host because the adults are found in the small intestine. They will lay embryonated eggs because it's not part of the PEFF group of trematodes which lay unembryonated eggs. So, the Heterophis will lay embryonated eggs, okay, and this will be eaten directly by your snails, okay? It does not hatch anymore the miracidium and it does not embryonate anymore in water because it's already embryonated. Inside the body of the snail, it will hatch the miracidium, which will penetrate the snail tissue to become the sac-like sporocyst, which will develop into aridia, which produces the tailed stage cercaria. Notice your cercaria. What is the morphology? It has a long tail. It's then a Lophocercus cercaria. And this cercaria will infect the second intermediate host, which are freshwater fish, okay? And will insist in the body of the fish as a metacercaria. And eating raw freshwater fish will predispose humans to have Heterophis or Metagonimus infection. I'm saying Heterophis or Metagonimus infection because they are closely related and they have a very similar life cycle. Looking back, do you also remember any other flukes which has the second intermediate host of freshwater fish? Right, Clonorchis and Opisthorchis. Okay, let's label the parts of your Heterophis adult. This is a diagram, okay? The intestine, as you can see clearly, is unbranched. The paired testes are, what is the morphology? Round or globular. The single ovary is also round, okay? And the vitellaria are very small, found right here near the ovary. So the vitellaria are small and found near the ovary. Let's now review the characteristics of the Heterophis adult. Okay, this is the image which you can find under the microscope of the heterophyte. The intestine, although it's not clear, it is unbranched. Okay, only one has branched intestine. You know what that is? It's fasciola. Everyone else, unbranched intestine. Testis, round. Ovary, round. Vitellaria is small and found near the ovary. You cannot see here the vitellaria, but it's covered by the uterus filled with eggs. Okay. Another important characteristics of your heterophyte adult is that it has three suckers. Okay? Remember that all trematodes have two suckers, the oral and the ventral sucker, except your heterophyte. Heterophyte has three suckers. Labeled OS is the oral sucker, VS is the ventral sucker, and the third one is labeled the GS or the genital sucker, also known as the gonotile. So why do they have this gonotile? It will function for attachment also and for the release of the eggs from the uterus. The first intermediate host of all flukes is always a snail. For heterophytes, it's the Pirella conica. And the second intermediate host are freshwater fish. You have the Bolti and the Bowery fishes. So these are the freshwater fish intermediate host of your heterophytes. You have the Bolti fishes, popularly known as tilapia in the Philippines, and you have the Bowery fishes. The diagnostic stage is the heterophyte ova. It's found in the stool. It's ovoid, light brown, and fully embryonated when laid. Remember, it's not part of the PAFF, so to lay embryonated eggs. Its egg is operculated with a thickened rim or shoulder. Okay, so what do you recall? Which flukes has a thickened rim and shoulder in their ova? It is similar to your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis, but there is a posterior protuberance for the Clonorchis and Opisthorchis. It is not present in the Heterophytes. As you can see, the posterior end is smooth. Okay, there is no posterior protuberance. Okay. Okay, remember your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis ova both has a posterior protuberance or knob. It is quite similar to your Heterophytes because of the thickened rim of shoulder and there is a operculum. But what's special about your Clonorchis and Opisthorchis, it has a small knob and its posterior end. While your Heterophytes or Metagonymous ova will have no posterior protuberance or knob. Check the posterior end of the worm. There is no posterior protuberance or knob. It is quite smooth, okay? Note the thickened rim or shoulder of the egg also where the operculum will be fitted. It is very similar to the Clonorchis and Opisthorchis egg, but they will have no posterior protuberance. So that is how you differentiate them from each other. Heterophytes and metagonymous infection is asymptomatic in most patients, but some patients may develop inflammation at the site of the attachment. Remember, the three suckers for the attachment causes the irritation of the intestinal mucosa. And when the intestinal mucosa is irritated, it will lead to the increased mucus production and diarrhea. So you'll have intestinal discomfort and mucoid diarrhea. What is unique to your heterophytes is that the adults can penetrate the intestinal wall. It can burrow into the intestinal wall and the eggs and sometimes even the adult worms can enter the vascular and lymphatic system because in the wall of your intestine you have their blood vessels and lymph vessels and there the adult flukes and eggs can enter and may go to ectopic sites of the body. Okay, so they can get lost in the body. Okay, so this can also happen with your Metagonymous yokogawai adult flukes. And there are already reported cases of the Filipinos who died of heart failure because of the presence of the eggs or adult stages in the heart muscles. Okay? And if they will go to the brain and spinal cord, if there is involvement of brain and spinal cord, it will lead to neurological disorders. We have been mentioning this Metagonimus yokogawai adult fluke. It's almost identical with your Echinostoma. It has the same life cycle and it has the same second intermediate host, the freshwater fish also. It also lives in the small intestine and it has a similar ova to your Echinostoma. So they are close relatives. But what's the difference? It's just the geographical distribution. So the Heterophis will infect people from Asia, Egypt, and Hawaii, and Metagonimus can be found usually in the Far East, Spain, and Balkan countries. Even the adults have similar structures, but we can still differentiate them. Okay, at one glance, they will look the same, but actually Heterophis has three suckers. Remember, oral sucker, ventral sucker, and the genital sucker, also known as your gonotile. Okay, the gonotile will release the eggs from the uterus. In Metagonimus worm, there are only two suckers present, the oral and the ventral suckers. Note that there is no genital sucker. This has no gonotile. Okay, so what will the worm use to release the eggs? The ventral sucker. Okay, now mentioning the ventral sucker, also look at the location of this ventral sucker in these two worms. Note the position of the ventral sucker. The ventral sucker of Heterophis is in the midline and at the middle of the worm, while the ventral sucker of the Metagonimus is displaced to the side. It's displaced laterally. Okay? So, the major difference, Heterophis, three suckers. Okay? Metagonimus, no genital sucker. The ventral sucker in Heterophis is at the midline, while the ventral sucker of Metagonimus is displaced laterally. So can you tell me if this microscopic specimen is Metagonimus or Heterophis? Okay, this has an oral sucker, a ventral sucker, and a genital sucker. Okay, and notice that the ventral sucker is at the midline. So there is only one fluke which has three suckers, and that is your Heterophis. Okay, comparing it to this other fluke, it has an oral sucker and a ventral sucker displaced laterally. So this fluke must be Metagonimus. Okay, now identify this worm. It has an oral sucker, a ventral sucker situated at the midline, and a genital sucker. So only one fluke has three suckers, that is your Heterophis heterophis. Also note the appearance of your ova. The ova is ovoid, yellowish with an operculum and a shoulder. Okay, a thickened rim or shoulder, and it has no posterior knob. Okay, so that is your Heterophis heterophis. Shown here also is the tegument with spines. Also helps for the attachment of this fluke. To treat heterophiasis, you can use praziquantel similar to all other flukes, okay? The prevention is by eating properly cooked fish. So avoidance of eating raw fish can help, okay? And health education and proper human waste disposal. The last worm we will discuss is unique because unlike other intestinal worms, the Gastrodiscoides hominis will live in the large intestine. Everyone else will live in the small intestine. So, let's go to the life cycle. We harbor the adults in the large intestine, and so we are the definitive host. They will lay unembryonated egg like the PEFF group. So let's add this later to your PEFF group. We'll update the list later, okay? The egg has still to embryonate in water and will release the ciliated miracidium, which will penetrate the first intermediate host of all the flukes, which is always a snail, okay? And inside the snail, it will become a sac-like sporocyst, develop the rhidia, and then will release the tailed stage cercaria. Okay, what is the morphology of the cercaria? Lophocercus, because it has a long tail. This cercaria is infective to the second intermediate host, which is an aquatic plant. So remember what has aquatic plant as the second intermediate host? It's like your fasciola and Phaseolopsis. Gastrodiscoides hominis also has aquatic plant as second intermediate host. And inside the aquatic plant, the cercaria will insist into a metacercaria and eating the raw water plants with these metacercaria will predispose you to get infected with gastrodiscoides. Okay, and so the infective stage to humans is the metacercaria in the water plants. So let's see the morphology of your gastrodiscoides hominis adult. It's reddish colored. It is vase-shaped because the anterior region is narrow and it ends with a rounded tip with an oral sucker. Your ventral sucker is at the posterior discoidal end. Okay, this is the ventral sucker. Anterior region narrow with oral sucker. Posterior discoidal end is circular with a ventral sucker. So this is your real-life specimen of your Gastrodiscoides hominis under the microscope. It is really red and vase-shaped. Okay, it's shaped like a vase. The blue arrow will point to the oral sucker at the narrow anterior end, and the yellow arrow will point at the ventral sucker at the posterior discoidal end. Okay, so that's how your Gastrodiscoides adult will look like. What about the clinical manifestations? As usual, it is asymptomatic in majority of cases, but in some persons with heavy infections, they can have mucoid diarrhea because of the irritation of the intestinal wall, fever due to infection, abdominal pain, and colic. Okay? So, updating the list of your trematodes that will lay unembryonated egg. It's actually PEFAG, PFFAG, with the addition of your Artificinostomum and Gastrodiscoides. So, the rule now is all trematodes will lay embryonated egg except for the PEFAG. Okay? P. paragonimus, E. echinostoma, F. fasciola, F. fasciolopsis, and A. Artificinostomum, and G. Gastrodiscoides. Remember that you cannot differentiate them from each other easily except for your Paragonimus with a posterior thickening. So I hope you understood everything that we have discussed. I hope I have helped you in your studies. Thank you. Nailed it.